Hey, what is going on? My name is MJ Lennon, and you are listening to the Fitness Business Life podcast. You're very welcome back to the show. Today, my guest is none other than my good friend, Philip Brady, who, for anyone watching on YouTube here, is sitting right next to me, exactly where he belongs. Phil, what about your brother?
Hello. How's it going? How are you?
I'm living the dream, as always. A little word of warning here. So we're actually filming this from the gym. So if you hear any barbells dropping or barbells getting put back into the J hooks or just any kind of distraction in general, you'll know that that is what is going on. We like to keep this as authentic as possible. No recording studios or nothing like that. Just in the gym, exactly where we belong. So anyway, I want to introduce you to my guest today. This is actually 2.0 because myself and Phil actually recorded a previous episode. Well, we thought that we recorded it, but we had some audio issues going on. No thanks to Darren. We had some audio issues, but we're here to resolve it, and we're here to have the conversation so that the listeners can benefit from what we said the last time. Fingers crossed. Anyway, Phil, let's give our listeners a bit of background into your good self and to what brought you onto the show. Tell us where you grew up, what you do for a living, and how the hell me and you come into contact in the first place.
Oh, right. I grew up in Dublin. I don't know, will we go as far back as is useful?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I grew up in Dublin. Family are from Clondalkin in Dublin. Both parents are from different counties, but so I was never let be a dub. So even though I'm born in Dublin, I was never allowed to have a Dublin jersey.
Or accent.
I tried to have the real thing, but it didn't happen. Grew up in Dublin, roughly 12 or 13. I moved to Navan. Started secondary school there. It was roughly around that age because I remember I was in the sitting room in Navan when the year before I'd been given a Tony Robbins book by my mum, and then I'd been given a Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers when I was 13. So no, it was roughly 12 or 13 that I had a conversation in that sitting room with somebody who was really close to me who was suicidal and really not seeing the bright side of their life. And from having read the book, I had no answers. I only had questions and being present. And so questions and being present were the two things that were in my bones from roughly 12 or 13. And so that's why I became a leadership or executive coach. Now kind of focused on, you could say like mindset stuff. But I mean, walking from there, let's say up to, I went to secondary school there. I went to university in Maynooth. I would have met Katie, my now wife, then friend, girlfriend in between.
What did you study at university?
I did a course called Finance and Venture Management with IT.
Oh, okay. So it was closely related to what you do today then?
So finance, just so boring. I mean, I was just so bad at some of this stuff.
Right.
But the venture management was all about entrepreneurship, business, some of those kind of like cool things. Mm-hmm. And the reason I chose that course is the open day in university. We went one of the evenings and there was a Porsche pulled up outside. And I'm like, whatever's going on here, I'm interested in this. And it was the guy that was speaking to that group.
Right.
And he's like, oh, we're venture capitalists. We have loads of money. Come and join the course kind of thing. So I joined the course and I got to do a placement with Microsoft. I was there for a year. I was in a sales and marketing role. So we had a budget of, I think it was £8 million across Western Europe countries.
And were they based in the Republic of Ireland?
No, Microsoft? So Microsoft, their office was in Sandyford,
okay.
But we had people in each of the Western Europe countries. So I think there was roughly 12 or 13 at the time within our remit. And I worked with the person, Anne-Marie Rockwell. Who
were you getting to travel with that?
No.
No, so you were still based in the south?
Always based in Dublin.
Okay.
Yeah. Did that in between Navan, and then I got offered a job at City in 2014. And I had moved from, let's say, banking roles. I was in like a sales job immediately after leaving college. I was selling technology. Like we had clients like Apple and Google and stuff like this. I mean, it was crazy. We made $100,000 a month in sales for this software. And I mean, it wasn't a big product or brand or whatever, but we did some cool work. But I just burned out from it. I was on a train up and down. It was 2 hours traveling every day, at least 2 hours traveling. And it was a relentless 100 cold calls a day, just in a machine or a hamster wheel. And it was really difficult. And my lower back gave way and said, like, you can't be at this. It's too much. Left that into a banking role. So I joined AIB. Then I moved to EBS, where I was selling investment funds. But I realized my upside was capped because they were just going to pay me a salary, no commission, even though I was selling the most across the country.
Nice.
And then a friend of mine who I'd met in Microsoft was from the north. And he said, there's a role in my tech team. Do you want to come and join us?
When you were selling technology to different companies, had you studied sales? Were you invested in sales? Nothing? You were just showing up as yourself and just being like, hey.
Not pushing, just focus on building relationships. And I mean, the sales manager, ask for the sale. I'm like, no, it's literally not the right time to do it. There will be a right time. We need to slow down and pause. And I was a little bit more relaxed than relational. I think you can tell by now that I'm not transactional. I'm relational.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Funny that in sales, right?
Yeah,
the relationship matters. You're not just a prospect or a lead. You're a human.
Who would have thought? Well, I mean, it comes down to trust. You know, I tell people all the time is obviously people have to trust you in order to want to make it transactional. And it's like they have to trust the company, they have to trust the product, and they have to trust the seller. And if you don't get those three things right, then you don't get it right.
Yes. And people can tell, you can smell it.
Yeah, intent has a scent.
Yes. And it's not a Paco Rabanne. It's worse than that, right? It's not Paco Rabanne. It's something different. Yeah. But I did those roles, and again, I built up good relationships. I mean, it was there that I met Mary, my 96-year-old friend. She's 97 actually at the end of this month.
Okay.
And I'll link her into the story about you coming along the journey as well. She used to come in every Wednesday. I used to give her money out from her account, and we built up a relationship, and she's still a good friend. I ring her most weeks.
Yeah, I met Mary at your wedding.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why I was going to bring you back into it.
Yeah.
Mary is one of my guests of honors.
When we met, you were coaching leaders in city. How did that transition come about?
So the guy who I worked in the internship with from Belfast in that role in Dublin for Microsoft said there's a role in technology. I knew I was capped in the role that I was at in EBS selling investments. So I said to Katie, who was then my girlfriend, we were dating 2 years at that stage. Will we go for a year? We go up north. I said to them at the time, if you pay me X, I'll move. And they paid me X. So I'm like, right, we'll go for a year. We rented in Castlereagh. I moved into a technology role. But I mean, what I had done ahead of taking that role was look into what city we're paying attention to. And at the time, I found a lot of like stuff focused on leadership development. And I put my hand up within a couple of weeks to get working in and coaching on one of the most senior leadership programs that they ran. And my now mentor as a coach was the head of coaching in EMEA, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And he kind of vetted me and says, oh, this young guy, I was probably roughly 26, is good enough. Let's get him on the program. So 3 times a year, I would fly over to London or I'd be on in Dublin, and we'd go between those 2 locations. So I was living in the north and traveling to Dublin for this. And I would coach some of the most senior people around the Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Built up some really good connections. Then I started delivering leadership programs, but then I actually moved from a technology role into a program management role. So any of the leadership programs that ran in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, so that's a region, I was managing and also getting to facilitate. So, I mean, there were hundreds of managers that would go through these programs a year. And I was in that role, coaching these most senior individuals, doing some really good work. And then people took notice, and I was given like high potential people. So people that are soon to be the most senior individuals. A few in particular stand out. I won't name names, but I mean, some of these people can be intimidating. They're that good.
Right.
So a lot of the...
In what way? In what way can it be intimidating?
Some people are just extremely intellectual. I've read all the leadership development models and the assessments, and I'm qualified in all of them, a lot of them. I don't use them because I'd rather just tell me the person.
Yeah.
How
Relational.
do you make sense of the world? And how some of these individuals, one in particular is extremely intellectual, super high IQ, but extremely good relationally. You don't often get that combination. Typically, you'll have one at the trade-off of the other. One person was very good at those two. That was one individual. Another individual is just on assessments. I knew roughly the sense-making ability of them was extremely advanced, and I didn't think my sense was as developed, so I didn't know what value I could offer them. And yet that was probably 2018, and I still speak to that individual once a month.
What is the, when you say they're like super intellectual, super aware,
Yes.
high agency?
Maybe say more about agency?
So if, my understanding of it is if you went on holiday to a foreign country and you broke the law and you get thrown in jail for something that wouldn't matter here, who would be the person that you would call to help you out? They're the highest agency person you know, as in they're the person who has all of the skills and tools to pull all of the strings to say, get that person out.
Yes.
So that's my understanding of agency in itself, is in like this person,
like ability to make things happen.
They can just make things happen. Yep.
Yes. Extremely high agency. Yes. Yeah.
What was the biggest lesson you took from him? I'm guessing it was him.
That was a him. The other person was a her. The biggest lesson,
just to be clear on all the pronouns going on in here.
Yeah, I mean, but also just that's who they are.
Yeah.
These are two particular individuals, and they happen to be a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
The thing I learned from both is, so from the female, it was being human with people with where they're at is sometimes all they need. I was the first person within a couple of months of this person's, one of her parents passed away, and I was the first person after a couple of months to have said, I'm really sorry to hear that.
So she was just straight back into the corporate grind after not even thinking, just like...
Yeah. So that being human in response to that was one thing. And then from the other individual, I learned that no matter how high we put people on pedestals, we are the combination of the yin yang. We will always have a shadow. And we'll also have a bright side. And it's just the acceptance of that in ourselves that gives permission to help other people feel accepted in the same. So on both, it's actually, we're all human. No matter where we place people, above or below us, because we'll do that status game thing, but we are just humans, and that's okay.
Do you think that that's one of the, when we're talking about leaders, do you think that that is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for leaders, in the sense that they feel like they have to have all of the answers? They have to know all of the path. They have to guide people and give people clear directions, and maybe that causes pressure. And so, you say, at the end of the day, we're all just human. We're okay. We can make mistakes. But as a leader, a lot of the time, I suppose all pressure is self-inflicted, but you feel like if you don't have all of the answers, then I'm a failure.
Yeah, or I can't be a leader, or I'm not good enough, or who am I to lead these people? And sometimes you hold a story and so do your followers. Who are they to? They've never done this. But that's the story we've inherited about what good leadership is. And it's typically because the people that are promoted are the ones that have started on the floor and have moved up the building. So that's the story that we've inherited. But I mean, the world is changing so much that we can't and will never know everything. And I mean, I'll link this to AI as well, because it's the invitation to the listeners and the watchers is we are at such an interesting inflection point. Leadership will need to evolve and change, and there's a way to do it, and it's exactly away from this. Expert comes from knowledge and lived experience in a domain that's quite narrow. If you rely on that for the condition to be good enough to lead other people, it will be crumbling in front of you, because there'll be people that will be able to curate how they use AI to know way more at scale than you can ever consume individually. And if you're holding the old model or way of consuming information as an expert as the way that determines whether you're a leader or not, and you haven't caught up with these young buccos coming up being able to prompt ChatGPT, for example, you'll be absolutely slaughtered, and rightfully so. But it's a stage in development, and we are moving into this again inflection point of like the world is going through some kind of like massive shift. We need to change our way of being, and we're in this doing world. I literally have recorded a video about this. I'm going to try and post that on Instagram later on, and it's like we're caught as this fly banging into the window, trying harder, doing more, when actually that can be automated. That can be just let AI do that part, the doing, the task, the output. Let AI do that. Our thing is, it has to be on the being,
The
the human qualities.
Yeah.
So the human plus the doing and the combination and the partnership between those two, that's the superpower, because that's where the leverage is. The leverage is not on your ability to input, sense make, output. That's not the thing anymore. The thing, it seems to be creating the space within the individual, like the leader, to be so safe in their body. So this is the vitamin P part, right? This is why
Yeah.
I think obviously I think it's the secret to the world's problems, right? But this is why the science would suggest if you're in a parasympathetic state, you're more likely to be creative, more collaborative, more longer term, more altruistic, so you can put other needs first. If you're in a sympathetic survival state, you're more likely to prioritize your own abilities. You're less willing to be empathetic, compassionate, thoughtful, again, longer term, all that kind of stuff. So that sense of grounding in your being, not just relentlessly doing where you're already burning out, creates the space within you to create, to solve problems, to ask the questions. And you have a really beautiful quote about questions versus answers.
Yeah, it's having the right answers is smart, but having the right questions is genius.
Right? So the genius of the future of leadership will be the questions, and they will come from space, not pace.
Nice. I know people listening to this are going to be thinking that this is only for corporate leaders. This is only for someone who is in charge of 50 to 100 people or
Thousands.
or high level entrepreneurs. But in actual fact, this can be micro, because this can apply to the individual.
Yeah. How do you lead the relationship with the person behind the counter? Are they a transaction? Give me my coffee.
Yeah.
Or can they be a character in the novel that you're writing?
So let's say if I tell you what, when it comes to the leadership conversation, I'm going to say like maybe 6 or 7, even 8 years, I want to say, into my entrepreneurial career, I never even thought about the word leadership. It didn't even come into my mind. Like, even though I was playing a leadership role, albeit I doubt very good, because I wasn't aware of it. And so I can't remember when my mind started to shift. My guess is that it was likely a mentor that had pulled me and said, hey, you're supposed to be leading these people. And then, okay, awareness breeds change. And so then I started to develop more so leadership skills rather than practical application skills. And so if someone well, you know, my audience is listening to this now and they're probably thinking to themselves, well, I've never seen myself as a leader per se. So like, what do you feel like the first point of contact is for them? I mean, post awareness, right? Well, it's even if you don't lead a team, lead yourself. You're a leader in your family. You know, maybe you're having a kid soon. Maybe you're getting married. Maybe you're opening a business. Maybe you're a one-man band in business and you're just leading your clients, right? Everyone, leadership can be macro or can be micro. So like, let's say post, I'm making you aware you're a leader, whether you like it or not. What do you think the next step is for someone to take to become a better leader for themselves?
And I was going to play with your question, right?
Yeah.
I wrote down, I don't think I have it here. I think it's on the previous page in my journal. I think some of my work is turning leaders into humans.
So other way around then, flip it.
I think so, right? So there's 3 ways to pay attention to. So when I meet individuals initially, I typically will be presented with work. Help me be more successful in my work. Then it's typically help me be more successful in my relationships. The third part that they say last in the order is self, right? So it, work, doing, we, relationship, I, self. So when we talk about leadership, we typically think it's only in the work state or work. It's not a quadrant because I don't know what's a 3.
We'll figure something out. We'll find something.
It's not relationship. I believe leadership is in the self part first, then relationships improve from there, then the work improves as well. So the quality of both relationship and work improves with the quality of the attention on self and the leadership of self. Let's remove the word leadership. Let's use human, right? To be human, you roughly have 2 drives. There's actually a third. I just can't remember it right now, so I'm going to pretend there's only 2.
Yeah.
First one is survive, right? Survival is linked to belonging. So I'll do what the crowd want me to do. I'll do what my parents want me to do. I'll follow the path. Get a good job. Go to university. Follow the model. That keeps people safe and certain. And it makes other people that are following the model feel good as well. So our survival is linked to belonging. First drive. Second drive, grow and expand into the world.
Well, the other one's got to be reproduction.
Reproduction as well.
There we go.
There's actually a different one. I just can't remember what it
okay.
is. But survival is probably linked to the reproduction part, for example.
So survive and thrive.
Survive. So let me link it to vitamin P again on the heart. Our heart is a valve. It opens and closes. It pumps blood through the body. I'm going to pretend, I don't think this is scientifically proven. Don't fucking Google this. Sympathetic, I imagine as closing of the heart. Parasympathetic, I imagine as this opening.
In a spiritual sense.
In a spiritual sense, maybe not a physical, right?
just to be clear, just before
that's why I say don't Google it.
Some sports science geek goes on and says, "Oh, that's all wrong." It was like, "Shut up."
So in a spiritual, I think that's metaphysical. Is that what that's called? Meta, so above physical. Yeah, something like that. Let's make believe. Let's pretend. Let's use your imaginations, right? The closing, I believe, is this kind of like staying safe and certain and small. And it's also like a reactive, just repeat the past. I believe leadership is the choosing of the response to open. And if you imagine leading is typically at the edge, so it's an opening of possibility and potential. And to do that, there's friction that's caused when you bump into the future. And so most people burn out at that point. So leaders hold the friction of the future and the chaos of the present. So some of the work is to, again, vitamin P is how do we ground them and make them recover and feel safe enough in their bodies they can continue to lean into the future while also holding the chaos. And if you can increase your capacity to hold chaos within your system and continue to be intentional about a brighter future you're moving towards, I think that's the most human you can be and the best leader you can be.
For anyone that hasn't heard you say this before, what do you mean by vitamin P?
So my wife calls me vitamin P, and for our wedding present, and we still have to get to how we met. She calls me Vitamin P. She got me reg plates for the car as a wedding present, and I just burst out crying. And then when I was at City and I was thinking about leaving, I had to set up a business, and I set it up as Vitamin P. So Vitamin P is parasympathetic, so it's linked to physiology. It's passion, so it's generating energy, and then purpose, directing it towards a meaningful future.
I actually just thought that it meant vitamin Phil.
Well, hey, funny that. I'm glad my name also begins with P, right?
So it starts by recognizing and just being human first. Leadership.
Yes. Saying there's a better future than this current reality. Let's move towards it. Let's accept reality. So again, that's a human thing. Let's accept reality as it is and also choose to improve it.
Yeah. So I heard this, I want to say it was Chris Williamson that said a while ago, and I'm sure he has rehashed it as well, but it was in the past, the pessimists survived.
Yes.
In the present, the optimists thrive. So my understanding of what you're saying is to be human is to be optimistic and recognizing that there's a brighter future for you, regardless of whatever's going on right now, regardless of whatever chaos is going on in your world right now. Is that what you're saying? Or is it slightly different?
Yeah, it's that, and it's in between those two to just accept reality along the way.
Okay.
Because if we don't, we add resistance. And if you add resistance, you're adding friction and energy in a negative direction. And that will increase the likelihood you'll move backwards.
When you start arguing with reality?
Yes.
Nice. Earlier on, when you said that you had read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers, I actually never heard of that book before.
Yeah.
Why have I not heard of that? Because I read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah. So it's just one for younger people.
Right. And is it written in the same, obviously, I'm guessing it breaks down all the habits, and then there is segue stories within each one. Is it more related to is it stories about teenagers within each one?
Yeah, I think so. Right. And it's a different color. I think it's green, whereas the new one is gold and white text.
Yeah. Because again, teenagers listening, it's probably a good starting point. Like that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was the first personal development book that I read.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And that was maybe 10 years ago, maybe, which isn't a long time ago. Like you've been into that for 20 plus years. 23 years. So for me, it wasn't really that long ago. And again, I suppose when I became more aware of having to lead myself first. So I suppose for anyone who is starting out in that world, like start there.
Yeah.
Become more aware of your own actions, your own thoughts, your own habits, how you navigate the world, how you interact with other people, and then take it from there.
Yeah. And I mean, we still have to get to the part of the story where I bump into you and how vitamin P also now includes physiology.
Well, let's break that down.
Right? So ahead of setting up vitamin P, that's post-COVID. Pre-COVID, I was meant to get married to Katie.
Yes.
3 times because of COVID. Katie rescheduled our wedding. I can't say that we rescheduled our wedding, right?
She was looking for every opportunity to get out of that. She was like, if I hold off, he might change his mind.
I know, let me create a world virus to get out of this thing, right?
Yeah.
But I remember it was Paddy's weekend. It was actually the same weekend. Oh no, we're recording this at the end of March, aren't we?
Oh, yes.
April is beautiful. I mean, spring has sprung, right? It's amazing. One of the leaders that I was coaching in Belfast, I saw this person walking around the building, and his body was telling me everything I need to understand about his mindset. And I remember asking in a couple of gyms in Belfast if I wanted to build my understanding of the body, where should I go? So I thought, I mean, before that question, I thought about personal training. That's the body, right? one of the guys in the gym that I used to go to, because we lived in Belfast before we moved out the road, he said to me, if I see then elite, now ECA,
Yep.
on the CV of the personal trainers, it bumps to the top.
Mm.
And I said, that's interesting. And I don't know how, if I contacted the page or what way that came about, but
I think you rang me directly to my phone, and I'm
Oh, there
pretty
you
sure
go.
it was during lockdown as well.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was, because I think I can remember it was a sunny day, and I remember sitting at the front.
Oh,
And
not just when I rang, it got sunny, no?
it might have. The reason I remember the conversation so distinctly was because it was pretty profound, in the sense that we didn't talk about the course. Because you rang me up asking about the PT course, and then we ended up talking about all of the books that we had read,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the stories from the books, the materials from the books. And I remember coming off the call, and I was like, I didn't even try to sell that guy a PT course. Like we ended up just meeting in the town after that,
Cafe Nero.
in Cafe Nero,
Around the corner.
and same again. We didn't talk about the PT course. We basically just had a similar conversation to what we're having now, which was quite different, I suppose, to what I was used to at that time. So that's probably why the conversation stood out.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was pictures on the wall, and I was describing the ability to think more like in complexity and chaos.
Yeah.
Um,
Because that's what the world was at the time.
yeah, it was completely in chaos.
Yep.
I remember that really well. And so I wanted to build an understanding of the body. And then I took part in the part-time course. So while I was still in corporate, wanting to evolve what I was doing in the world, was able to do that part-time Tuesday, and I think it was a Sunday so maybe Thursday, Sunday. Met such a bunch of unbelievable people. So one of the things that I think you'll probably get from spending time with me is, like, I spend time with people that are important according to normal measures. But what I really, I get a little bit emotional. Like, what I pride myself on is just my ability to sit on the floor with people. And I remember sitting over there with like Rory and some of my group and Sean and some of the others, just sitting on the floor, just listening. And then I remember you said a couple of things to me during the course. I had read some of the books on like the edge of leadership. Again, connecting movement or physiology with performance and well-being. And you had told me, don't like hold the information.
Yeah.
Just let it go.
Yeah, I probably called you a selfish bastard. I probably didn't put it in those terms. I probably said, Phil, you're being a selfish bastard. Like, you need to stop holding on to that and share it with the world, because you cannot outgive the universe.
Yeah. I mean, that and Hell on Earth is Meeting the Man He Could Have Been. I mean, I literally put it on my wall at home. It stared at me every day while I was going back to my job.
Since I said that to you, have you, when you look back, so that was maybe 3 years ago, I probably said that to you. When you look back from then until now, and having looked at that every day, can you say that between then and now that you've done all you can to get closer to the person who you want to be?
Not everything, but I definitely think more of my choices are towards that.
Nice.
Yeah, more.
So from a practical sense then, we talked about being human first. Let's talk about leading other people then. In my understanding, so lead yourself first, then...
And maybe just because we can scale from this place. So
Yep.
Leading self comes with an acceptance that you contain both good and bad.
Okay.
Now let's scale it to other people.
Well, no, tell me more about that. Well, you've said this to me many times, right? And here's one of the big profound changes that has made in me personally. So I can only share this here. Yeah.
What we just said.
Yeah. So what you just said. So here's one of the whenever you said that to me, I felt like, so obviously all of our listeners will know my background in combat sports and stuff, but I let that go for a number of years. And there's no, like, it's weird, right? I don't like confrontation with people, but I fucking love fighting with people, right? I love it. Like, whenever I was a kid, I loved sparring, I loved boxing, loved everything about it. But then whenever I became a grown up, right, I was like, well, I need to let that part of me go.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. And let it go for years. Told myself I would never compete again. And then I remembered you saying to me, no, there's the dark part is okay as well. It's human. And I was like, fuck, I want to start fighting again. What do I got to do?
And look at you now.
And look at me now. And so, like, that was years ago.
But that's honoring a part of who you are.
Of who I am.
I'm getting goosebumps. That's beautiful. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. That was the catalyst for that. I was like, well, okay, as an adult, you're not supposed to want to fight with people. Like, that's I don't know. I mean, it's like kids, wrestle and fight and everything. You're not supposed to do that as an adult. And then you'd say to me, no, I mean, there's light and dark. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's.
I'm honestly emotional. That's beautiful. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And again, there's one example. Because this stuff, it is profound. So that one line is still ongoing 3 years later, so lead yourself first, accept that there is dark and light, and in doing so, leading other people. How do people become better leaders in that sense?
I think because you accept your humanity, I'm a little bit lost for words now. Honestly, I mean, that touches me deeply.
Nice.
I'm really happy to hear that. When you do accept yourself and you're also accepting of the starting position that you're in, so you're grounding where you are and you're pointing towards a brighter future, people will want to be part of that because it moves them from where they are to somewhere brighter. And like that's what it is. Like, that's it. It doesn't have to get any more complicated. We overcomplicate it because we think when somebody's resistant to change. So sorry, let me go back a step. All you're doing is changing or steering the direction of change. Let's say it that way instead. So rather than changing towards safety and certainty and small and reaction and habit, you're choosing the direction to change, to shift slightly differently. That's leadership. And the ability for you to be so, I want to try and be careful about how I say this. It's not necessarily certain that direction is true or right or better or whatever. It's that at least it feels more useful than our starting position. I think that's roughly right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to not be so specific that you get relentlessly like, this is the only way and it's mine.
Yeah.
When you aim there and you create a brighter vision of the future, other people want to be part of making that because people do want some certainty of feeling like they can also expand into it. So one of the things that limits leaders, I believe, is their vision has to be so much greater than the people within that vision, right? So your vision must what's called transcend, so it must go above and include all of the smaller visions. And so sometimes what we need to do is combine and connect that vision of the future with the individual's vision of their future and show how the two interrelate. But as a leader, it must be more expansive than an individual could come up with themselves. Because what is it? Together, on my own I can go so far, together we can go further. So to see how it's like this combination, it's like this living organism, and you've just drawn a narrative arc over more. For example, work harder than you think you did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Other people can unite under that with their own version of this, but that's a useful, like a meta narrative or an overarching story or vision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So vision is first. Then we get to then there's tactics and do, but like the being is be in the future, ground yourself there, realize that it's change. Resistance is going to be natural in self, but you've gone through that first. Then other people will resist it. Accept that. Don't judge it as bad. It's part of the process. You've just done it earlier. If you don't accept that that's part of who you are, you'll judge it in other people, but it's because it's not accepted in you.
Someone once said to me, leadership is communication, right? Question that I have here for you: through what means of communication would you prefer, verbal or actions as a leader, or do people respond to both? Because I'm sure that there is people who would look at someone who's a leader and they would say they're intellectual, they're charismatic, and their vocabulary is pretty broad, so they've got all of those things, and there's no way that I could do that. But at the same time, and I also feel like that you don't need to necessarily have all of those traits to be a good leader, but you can show through how you act and how you perform, shall we say, the path that you want to lead people on. Do you have a personal preference as to which means of communication you would prefer from a leader?
But that's different to traits. Maybe say a little bit more.
Well, so how would I break this down? I'll give you an example. Well, the best way that I know how is someone owns a gym, right? And maybe they don't have all of those traits, in a sense that they're not able. Maybe they have a vision for the future themselves, but they're not able to communicate it with everyone around them because they struggle themselves to maybe process it or understand. They've maybe got a sense of, well, I wanted to go in this direction, but I don't know how to communicate that with my team. So then the only thing that I can do is show up every day and take this action, this action, this action, which guides people to the place that we want to go. Because I know for me personally, right? So when I'd say to you, I only really started focusing on leadership maybe 6-7 years ago, and I had been technically doing it for a number of years then, but I was doing it through actions. I wasn't doing it through communication. Like I probably just expected everyone to know the direction that we wanted to go. Is like, how can you not read my mind? I show up every day and I do this here. Like, how do you not know that these are our values and this is what we prioritize? And so, at least in my own personal experience, action alone, moving alone, wasn't really, it was maybe enough at the time, but as ECA has grown, and we've got 6 different locations now, I've had to develop my own communication skill sets verbally. Right? So do you think that...
Because again, that doesn't travel. You can't be in each of the other locations.
Who knows what I'm doing?
Only your words can.
Exactly. Only my words can.
Yes.
So I suppose I just answered my own question in a sense that maybe on a micro level, your actions will work, but on a macro level, does it have to be verbal?
Well, you see, this goes back to what I was saying about not just doing, it's the way of being. And your way of being is how you are, not just what you do. Because if all you have is what you do, you're limited by geography.
Yeah.
If it's your way of being, well, then how you interact has an impact, and that ripples differently then. They saw you sweeping the floor. Now, that would have an impact, but it's probably more contained. I mean, I have a dream. Moved people.
Yeah. Okay. So the process is start with yourself first.
Self always first, then relationships. So let's get back to your communication piece.
Yes.
So communication of vision, I would suggest, again, we think that leadership is actually, you must do all of that yourself. The best question I learned a couple of years ago, and I've repeated it a few times to Michelle if she's listening, is what's yours to hold? And leaders often hold more. So again, back to the expert, I need to know everything. No, that's not all yours to hold. The vision should also contain some of the other individuals within your team. So then you're holding maybe the need to have a vision. They get to input into it, and your job is to integrate. So I heard a really good analogy of this recently. If you imagine a meadow and there's flowers growing in individual spots, imagine the flowers are your team members and they're experts, so they're deeply rooted in spot, right? They create pollen that attracts honeybees. Honeybees go between these flowers in the meadow. But what do? They take the best of the pollen and they integrate it into like a honeycomb, and they make honey. Your job as a leader is to make the honey, but the team input into that process as well. So your job is that overarching like combination, or it's like alchemy. Take the shit, take the good, turn it into gold, like honey, right? Leaders think they need to be flowers. You don't. You have to do the honeybee work, which is the how can I take in the sum of all? And again, it's space that makes that come true. It's space. It's always space, not pace, space. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, no, whenever you were saying that, my thoughts turned to commander's intent. Right? So
we're going to make honey.
Yeah, so we're going to make honey.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the reason
that's the
is
commander's intent.
because that's who we are. We're bees and you're flowers. You do what you do and we do what we do. Let's do it together and we'll do something really good together.
Yeah. Speaking of nature, you like to spend a little bit of time there, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
How come?
I always walk in heavy and I leave feeling lighter. In my work, get I was gonna get emotional again. I don't know what's wrong with me today.
You're an emotional wreck today.
This is what an open heart does to you, right?
Let's get sympathetic for a second.
Yes, sympathetic nervous system. Let's punch people. When you are in a leadership role or coach or business owner or any of those kind of things, again, I talk about like the yin and the yang. You will get presented with the collective shadow. Stress, overwhelm, doubt, insecurity, fear, guilt, shame, all this kind of dark side. Like what's called bad, it's not bad. It's just darker side. And if you haven't built in recovery for yourself, it will become overwhelming because it'll get jumbled within you. If you spend more time in nature, so that's a sympathetic response, more or less. Again, please don't Google what I'm saying. Roughly, it's true. It's true enough. It feels right. Sympathetic response can typically switch off or lower because you can spot threat from a distance in nature.
Okay.
You also, in nature, fresh air is cleaner. We breathe out what trees breathe in, and they breathe in what we breathe out. We're built to be around them, so there's a connection again. The other thing about nature is we're in a world where, if I post on Instagram, I get all the likes. So we're individuated, we're separate, we're atomized from each other. There's no collective. I can tag you, but it's just not the same, right? When we're in this together, it's very different. This is a different experience, this connection going on. When you're in nature, you realize the interconnectedness or the interdependence that is actually reflecting back to us the same. we're built to be in connection and conversation with everything around us. And I think we often feel separate from. And if we let go of that separateness and realized the need for connection, most of our challenges would go. And then I also just love watching Elvis run around off lead, happy as Larry, his big ears flowing in the wind when he jumps, his jowls flapping in the wind to let more smells in. He runs off. I get annoyed. I have to run after him. Nature is beautiful. And I mean,
for anyone who does it,
not the singer.
It's not the singer. Elvis is...
I love watching Elvis's big ears.
Elvis is Phil's dog. He's a beagle.
A beagle, purebred bastard.
Yeah. They all are, but they are absolutely incredible. I feel extremely fortunate just on that, because like I can walk out the back with my Rottweiler and I'm in nature.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty cool.
And maybe just one more thing about nature as well is we have this idea that when I hit this perfect box off, so when I'm a leader, when I'm in this box of leader, or when I feel I fit, horseshit, all wrong. You can do it right now. Again, what's the intentional choice forward rather than reactive path to past? That's leading. So it's in the micro stuff, right? In nature. So again, we have this expectation that there's perfect and that we're not it or not in the box. All because of what we see online. When you get to nature, it's in bits. It's so messy. It's fucked. But in that, it's so perfect. So there's no such thing as perfect, even in nature. And again, it gives us permission to accept that about ourselves. It's nature. We're human. It's all just fine.
There's there's two talking points here that I want to get to. So, what has been the biggest lesson you've taken away from having Elvis? What does he teach you about yourself?
So this is why I say about the human and the shadow. You would probably agree with the statement I'm about to make, but I'm not somebody that's very angry. I have no real aggression or like less of those kind of like what's typically deemed like masculine or manly, like aggressive.
Let's just say you're in touch with your feminine side.
Yeah, more feminine than masculine.
And I said to you, bro, you need to get punched in the face. Like you literally need to take a few. Have you ever been in a street fight?
Never
been.
Once Patrick Kenny punched me in the face when I was about 7 or 8 in Dublin. I know exactly where I was punched. It was just outside my school on the green beside the lamppost. I ran home crying to my mum. And I've never been punched again.
Patrick Kenny, I am fucking after you, bro. Like, see, if anyone knows Patrick Kenny who's listening to this podcast,
please don't, Patrick. I love
you.
I've transcended and included you. You are welcome with an open heart. Please, I've told so many stories about you. You are loved so much.
Tag Patrick Kenny in this shit.
The best lesson I learned from Elvis. So, I call the dark side like things like anger, shame, guilt, these emotions we want to push away. When I had the expectation that pups were a certain way because of Instagram, like always cute, always happy, always doing what they were told, I don't know, always fun, and Elvis shit on the floor, my expectations were slashed. The reality hit me in the face. And in between expectation and reality, if expectation is higher, is suffering. So it added this suffering, which was anger. And I hadn't interacted with my anger in years, maybe ever. And I've looked into it since, right? So lower back pain is sometimes suppressed anger. Right? So he taught me that I was bringing an expectation to the reality of how he should be, which was different than the reality, and it added suffering. If you scale that to life, accepting reality means you're more likely to be content or calm or happy with what is, because no matter what happens, it's just a thing.
I remember you said as well that you had taken him for, I think he was probably a pup at the time, but he had shit all over the place.
Yeah.
And you had said that it was like 3 a.m. in the morning and you had him out and he had shit everywhere and you were walking about your little estate picking up dog shit.
Development. I
Development.
got that wrong once. And
Okay,
I always have to catch
You're
it.
not allowed to say estate. Okay. Sorry to any of your neighbours. And you said, yeah, I was just walking about picking up dog shit in the dark. And I said, well, that's generally life, isn't it? Yes. I mean, you could ignore it if you want. You could ignore it.
Yes, that's leadership, right?
Yeah.
Doing what's right, even when people aren't looking.
Yes, and that's exactly what you were doing. That's another thing.
But it's also, what's your morning routine? Ice baths at 5. Did you hear this one about the guys slagging each other? And there's like, I get up at 4 a.m. and read a book on 2-speed. And then the other guy is kind of slagging. Look it up, it's hilarious. But my morning routine is I get up at 6:15 because Elvis is scratching the door. Mm-hmm. I go downstairs, I let him out to the toilet, I take him for a walk, he normally takes a shit, I'm carrying around this warm bag of shit in my hand, and then I go home and I get to work.
Nice. So you pick up shit in the morning. Yep.
That's the routine. What's the issue, right? What's the issue? So the routine doesn't make the person.
Yeah.
It's just a crutch. You can show up and do the thing right now.
And then I'm going to talk you back into this, but speaking in terms of getting in touch with your masculine side, we got you to Jiu-Jitsu, didn't we?
Yeah.
We got you going there.
Yeah.
So when's the return?
2025, I think, is looking really good.
What did you learn from being there?
Girls can also choke you out.
Nice.
The worst injury I actually had was a girl rolling with a girl. I think one of them is just, so I'm reading The Expectation Effect at the moment, or rereading it. I'm trying to think of a story from it. Let's pretend. More or less, our expectations can shape how healthy or unhealthy we are. Our expectations of sport can also cause injury. And if I expect to go and get injured, I'm probably more likely to tighten. And what I learned there is actually you must just flow with it.
Yep.
You must become looser and relaxed. And it's the exhale. The ability to exhale under that stress is the secret to staying grounded enough that you can make better decisions. The person that's anxious or under pressure and tight is more likely to make the wrong decisions. And so I said this to you before. The person that is, I can't remember what way I explained it. The most grounded person in chaos is the one that will navigate it more appropriately. Will lead rather than be overwhelmed by it.
Nice.
Roughly true, right?
Absolutely true. I mean,
sorry, let me interrupt for 1 second. Because it's back to the thing about your advancement through it, right?
Yep.
Your level of being able to add chaos to a beginner. Let's say at a beginner, it's A and B I'm able to handle.
No, it's just A.
It's just A, right? Just be tapped. Just don't die.
Yeah.
Right? But if my skill set is A and B, and then Lenny comes and he's able to do A, B, C, and D, that's going to feel greater than my capacity. So will feel like chaos. I'll be overwhelmed and could retreat from that. If I can expand to those 4 things, then I can handle that level of complexity or chaos. And that just keeps increasing as numbers increase of letters or skills or behaviors or whatever. So this is why skill acquisition is really helpful to a point, because that's called horizontal development. So you add moves to
You broaden the base.
You broaden your base. So your base has expanded an awful lot. The layer that's what's called vertical development is that being part. So I can give you all the moves, but if you can't control your breathing or your emotions, you'll be beaten by the person that can, who only has 2 tools. Because when the chaos happens, they're better able to regulate and make the right choice. You'll react and make the wrong one potentially.
Nice.
Roughly true?
Roughly true. Yep. It makes sense in my world. Final question here for you, and this is a bit of a curveball. Are we humans having a spiritual experience?
We're going to the 10.0 question, are we?
Are we humans having a spiritual experience, or are we spirits having a human experience?
Do you really want me to answer this?
Yeah. Can I tell you a great answer that I was told the other day?
Yeah.
Someone said to me, it was actually Damien Mulgrave, shout out to Damien, it's my jiu-jitsu coach. I want to get him on here someday, actually, it'll be good. If you're listening, Damien, you're coming on, whether you like it or not. He said to me, being human is a spiritual experience. And I was like, fuck.
So I, let me see the way into this. In developing leaders, there's what's called multiple like lines of development. We talked about like cognitive. So how capable in your mind are you able to hold complexity? Emotional. How integrated have you worked on your own emotional range between shadow and light that you can interact with wider spectrums of emotions: guilt, shame, anger, frustration, joy, ecstasy, excitement, whatever. Another one is called ego development. And in ego development, the way I've paid attention to developing this for myself is to look at things called like non-dual awareness. You ever heard of this?
Never.
And funny this, on the way in this morning, or like this afternoon, I re-listened to a podcast I've listened to probably 3 or 4 times. It's on Modern Wisdom. Chris Williamson interviews a guy called Rupert Spira. And I promise I'll link it to your question.
Yeah.
We see, so I see you, I see mics on a table, I see camera, I see this. I feel hunger, a little bit of thirst, a little bit of probably still the emotional residue from the being kind of impacted by what you shared. All outside of my sense of awareness. And the ego development feels like one of the lines towards it, or the development towards it, is a letting go of content of experience and paying attention to awareness of experience. So like a cinema screen, watch the movie and see yourself as almost separate from it, right? That's roughly taking you out of content into awareness. Paying attention to awareness, so awareness on awareness. I've never really explained this, so I find it a little bit hard, but hopefully still following.
Yep.
Awareness on awareness will ground you in this state of what people call soul. I don't think it's soul. I think it's just like consciousness.
Yep.
Right? So when I look at Elvis, the dog, not the singer, I see him see me. I see you seeing me. There's this recognition, right? But that's like 1.0, maybe 2.0. If we take it up a notch, so that's, you could say, spiritual experience. So within, to recognize consciousness can be perceived as spiritual.
Yeah, I get that.
In a human casket, we'll interact in this world. But roughly the way non-dual awareness explains the answer, hopefully, to the question is, if you realize all of what goes on is what's the way they describe it? I can't remember. More or less, we're all connected. We're all part of the same experience of being. We see, so your consciousness and awareness is the same consciousness and awareness to some extent. We just see separation because we've got lost in the content, not the awareness. And I think when you, I'm probably not making much sense. getting a little bit lost because I haven't articulated it because this is last 3-4 months.
It's a hard question to articulate.
Yeah. It's that you ground in awareness and you realize we're all connected, and you realize that the awareness is the spiritual experience of life. But you also realize that by being human, you are taking part in the collective experience at the same time. And that's a non-duality, because there's not a separation between the awareness and the experience. It's all part of this moment in front of us. When you let go of that, whether you say the right thing to me or not can't trigger me, because I'm just in this state of not needing anything for this moment to be better or worse. So I think by being both a spiritual self and experiencing the moment in front of us as a human, we get to interact with the moment in front of us. And when you realize the profound gift that is, it's extremely moving.
Love it. My thought process around it changes every time I ask someone that question, because I'd have absolutely said, "Oh, we're humans having a spiritual experience."
Say more.
Straight to the point. I would have said.
And sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So is that from your experience, or is that from a read experience?
Explain read experience.
As in you've read it somewhere, heard it somewhere?
Oh, okay. I thought you were on about the color. No, it was on personal experience. Or
can you explain it? Because if you go to direct experience, I actually think you look at it
completely different.
The other way around.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's a content.
Yes.
Being in the way of the experience or awareness of content.
Yeah, content view on it. Whereas if I was to look at it in the way that you just described it, I would say the complete opposite. So it could well be that I was basing my decision on learned and not on experienced.
And that's why I asked the question.
Yep. And so...
Because direct experience right now, I mean, I always talk about cold exposure, like, it's so hard, it's the worst. Again, think about shadow. Anything we're told is bad, we'll push away. Cold, so my body tightens, right?
Yep.
If you go between hot and cold, so there's a sauna and a cold plunge in the gym that I go to, and if you just experience them and notice them as an experience without judgment, you realize you can just sit in awareness and just watch your body react to these things. And it's like, it's doing the same thing.
You've
just
detached from yourself. Yeah.
So the yin yang plays out as the human experience. We can be the conscious observer of that experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're the awareness, not the yin yang human.
Yeah. So even I'd have looked at it from a scientific point of view and just been like, purely we evolved from primates to where we are today. And when people, where does your spirit go after? I'm like, well, where was it before? But it's been passed down through generations, and someone said to me, energy can't be created or destroyed, so what happens to your energy? And I'm like, fuck. Because I was like, well, I've been dead before, so I know what it's going to be like when I go there again. And they were like, well, you haven't really, because, your energy has been passed down. So then when you go, where does that energy go? And I was like, oh, fuck. Now we're back to square one.
Yeah. Well, it just goes back into atoms and molecules. I mean, we are stars and they are us. Right? That's the Brian Cox answer,
it's going
isn't
back
it?
to stardust. Yeah.
I mean, that's going to happen. The sun in roughly 5 billion years will implode or explode or whatever happens to it. It's not going to be around. I mean, like, we have 5 billion years before this cycle ends.
Phil, thank you so much, brother. You're an absolute legend. Was there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
maybe just blatant plug that I coach on the ECA Mastermind.
Yes.
And some of the legends that are part of that community, I think we're so lucky to have as part of like your ecosystem. And that, no doubt, the mastermind is always open to growth.
It absolutely is. The mastermind is always open to growth. The academy is always open to growth. The ECA summit, Recon, the franchise, all of it.
Yes.
All of it is always open to growth. We're always expansive.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, my man.
Likewise.
Appreciate the time.